The NBA playoffs have been a ton of fun, and I don't see that changing whatsoever. When was the last time you had no clear title favorite? When was the last time you had a first round matchup that felt like the Eastern Conference Finals? Well, at least going into this series. And I think it's safe to say the playoffs have created some crazy offseason scenarios, so today I want to talk about it. If you guys like the content, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. Let's shoot for a crazy like goal and go for 24 likes on today's video, and let's get into this. Today's video is sponsored by PrizePicks. It's a player prop site that's legal in most US states. You just choose over or under on a bunch of different stats for up to 10 times your entry. It's really made the playoffs a ton of fun for me, and I've got a good feeling about today's entry. First, I'm taking DeMar's over on points. Back against the wall, down 3-1. I think he goes over easily. In a similar situation, I'm also taking Nikola Jokic's over on points. Then I'm throwing in Brook Lopez over 4.5 rebounds, as that just seems way too low. And lastly, coming off hitting 5 threes, I'm taking over on Monte Morris, 1.5 made threes. If you guys want to play along, I've got a pretty awesome promo for you. If you guys sign up using the link in the description or use code Jimmer and do at least a $5 entry, and Chris Paul scores at least 1 point, a tough task, in any of the remaining games against New Orleans, you're going to get $50 in promo money. Pretty awesome. Thank you PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. I think we need to start with the elephant in the room, and that's the Brooklyn Nets. It's been a crazy season for them, and that might be an understatement. They went into the year as the heavy title favorites, and rightfully so. They have one of the greatest offensive trios we've ever seen in Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden. Now, their season got off to a weird start when it came out that Kyrie wasn't going to be getting the shot, and the Brooklyn Nets planned to be without him unless he either changed his mind or the mandates changed. Now, the Nets ended up going back on that, but Kyrie still couldn't play in home games. Then out of nowhere, reports came out that James Harden might be leaving this offseason, most likely to Philadelphia. That eventually turned into a trade request, and Harden was sent to the 76ers, and the Nets were able to get Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and a couple first-round selections. I think despite the not-so-positive sentiment around Ben Simmons leading up to that trade, most didn't really think it changed the Nets' place in the Eastern Conference. They were still expected to get more than enough on the offensive side with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, and now they added one of the best defenders in the entire league. It looked like Ben Simmons was finally going to be taking the court, but then it comes out that getting back into game shape, he injures his back, but he's still expected to return in a couple weeks. Well, that went on way longer than expected. The Nets barely made the playoffs, having to go through the play-in, and they matched up with the Boston Celtics in the first round. With a combination of the Celtics' suffocating defense and the fact that Ben Simmons, despite again being projected to return, never did, the Nets were eliminated in the first round in 4-0 fashion. Now that's a little deceiving, given that there was just a point differential of 17 points, which included a game winner from Jason Tatum, but nonetheless, concerning for a team that looked like a lock to win a title following the trade that brought James Harden from Houston. Now this forms a pretty interesting offseason. Let's start by looking at the position this roster's in. They've got Kevin Durant locked up for 4 more years. They still have Joe Harris for 2 more seasons, who I think was an overlooked loss for the Nets. They've got Ben Simmons locked up for 3 more years, and Seth Curry for 1. People haven't been really talking about it too much, but this offseason, Kyrie Irving has a player option. I think most are expecting him to return, but I think if we've learned anything about Kyrie, it's to never try and predict what's going on in his head. The rest of this roster, excluding some rookies, are hitting the open market. LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond, Goran Dragic, and easily the biggest of all, the guy that's been the Swiss Army knife of this team, Bruce Brown. I don't think their offseason is close to as simple as bring back Kyrie, get Ben Simmons and Joe Harris healthy, and run it back, especially given just the absolute unknown surrounding Ben Simmons, which I really want to highlight here. Given that situation with 33-year-old Kevin Durant, a 30-year-old Kyrie, assuming he comes back, do the Nets even bother waiting to see what they have with Ben Simmons, or do they make a move that gives them better security in the roster going into next season? With situations across the league that might make a lot of sense, such as a possible sign and trade for Bradley Beal with Washington, a package for a lot of veterans in Indiana, or young teams in the league like Sacramento that might have a lot of interest in a 25-year-old former #1 pick, I would actually be kind of surprised if Ben Simmons is actually a net at the start of next year. But at the end of the day, with a complete retool being a necessity for this team, Kyrie's future is still unclear. Steve Nash on the hot seat. I think the playoffs definitely created an incoming big trade for the Nets. Another team we need to pay attention to is the Utah Jazz. I really think things are going to get blown up there. Without a trade, the roster that Utah has right now will be their roster for a while. So the question is it worth keeping this group together when it looks like they're going to get bounced out in the first round by a Mavericks team that didn't even have Luka Doncic for half the series? Now, trade rumors have been circling around the Jazz for most of the season, which is usually the case for a team that's lived in the middle ground of the league for a while, good enough to be a playoff team and not have a lottery selection, but without the ceiling to be more than that. Right now, they're going to be paying Rudy Gobert $46 million in 2026. We all know Rudy Gobert is one of the best defenders in the league, but there are some serious questions about how much value he really brings at that kind of price tag. They still have 34-year-old Mike Conley on contract for 2 more years, getting over $20 million a season. Jordan Clarkson is locked up for just one more year, but the real piece that makes their offseason so fascinating is Donovan Mitchell, who's on contract till 2025 with a player option after that. Now, it's not out of the question that a young star like Donovan Mitchell, who spent the last 5 years trying to make this work, requests out. We've heard this brought up a lot, but even if he doesn't, it's also not out of the question for the Jazz to look at the situation at hand and decide they're in a pretty good spot to move on from this group, given just how much of a jumpstart to a rebuild they would have. I still think they would get a pretty good haul out of Rudy Gobert, even given his contract, especially to a team that already has their books maxed out. For Donovan Mitchell, there's no question they would be getting a ton, but every year that his contract goes by, that price is going to continue to go down. The main team rumored right now for Mitchell is easily the Knicks. I've never seen a team have such rumored interest in a player that isn't supposedly on the market and plays the same position of their star young piece, but it really seems in the event that Donovan Mitchell is shopped, the Knicks are going to be willing to give the sun and the moon. Now, there's no question that a Donovan Mitchell trade would be fun, but what's really so interesting is all the dominoes that would fall after that, with Gobert, Bogdan, Conley, and Clarkson probably also on the way out. Now, I do need to say, sometimes with these smaller market teams, we don't see them go with the decision that makes the most sense on paper. The Jazz aren't bringing in star free agents. They depend on star loyalty via the draft, something that may be hard to rely on if you just trade everyone when the team ceiling gets hit. Those are the two main teams that I really think we're seeing the playoffs define their offseason, but I still think there's a lot of interesting storylines past that. You've got the Warriors looking incredible, the current odds-on favorite to win the title, but what do they do with all these young guys with it appearing they're not going to be in a rebuild anytime soon? It's hard to get guys like Kuminga and Moody into a playoff rotation. Is that going to change quick enough for them to hold on to them? I also think the absolute breakout of Jordan Poole makes a lot of trade scenarios for some of their foundational pieces interesting. I wouldn't necessarily say for this season, but something interesting to pay attention to. One of my favorite series so far has been the Grizzlies and Timberwolves. I don't think many people are expecting a big run in the playoffs from either team that comes out of this series, but I think both have shown they're on the brink of being contenders, and I'm keeping my eyes on them as buyers this offseason. If the right opportunity becomes available for two of the smallest markets in the league to go all in, I don't see how they pass on it. Then we've got the Atlanta Hawks, who are currently down 3-1. By the time you're seeing this, they've either pushed it to 6 games, or they've been eliminated in the first round just a year removed from going to the Eastern Conference Finals. They've got some solid pieces on this roster. It's just not going to work consistently for Trae Young to be the only playmaker on this team. Clint Capella, Kevin Huerter, DeAndre Hunter, John Collins, Danilo Gallinari. When any of those guys are on the court with Trae Young, they have almost no ball handling duties whatsoever. I think this Hawks organization is hopefully coming to the realization that Trae is going to need to spend some time off the ball and that they get aggressive looking for another playmaking option this summer. If they still want to go with Trae Young hero ball, then I would expect a swap of offense for defense with a guy like John Collins. They've got to do something this summer though. The last team I want to mention is the Pelicans. We're seeing Zion Williamson, who apparently isn't healthy enough to take the court, throwing down crazy dunks and warm-ups. Something's not adding up here, and it seems like a Zion Williamson trade is heading our way. Whether that's from Zion not wanting to be with the Pelicans, or the Pelicans looking at the situation now with Brandon Ingram, the addition of CJ McCollum, a steal in the draft in Herbert Jones. All these guys putting up a fight against the Suns and thinking they might really have something here after a Zion trade and still a solid amount of draft picks from both the Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday trades. This Zion situation is truly one of the weirder things I've seen in the league recently, so hopefully we get some answers this offseason. These have just been some of my thoughts when it comes to trades from watching the playoffs. Now, I know it seems crazy to bring up this many teams, but considering the weak free agency class ahead and the very limited cap space across the league, this is going to be the main method for most teams looking to make any kind of serious change. So I really think we need to buckle up, but I want to know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Who do you think is going to be the biggest name traded this offseason? If you guys like the content, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.